My name is Yasmin Hurd. I'm the director of the Addiction Institute at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. There are many people who had never tried cannabis before because it was illegal. And now that New York State and so many other states around the country have made medicinal and recreational cannabis, or as many people in the street call it, marijuana, legal, there are many new people trying it. And it's just like any other drug. Even if it's now legal, you have to really be careful about, for example, where you obtain this product. There are many bad actors out there, and we have seen that cannabis can contain products that are not only that they're not good for you, they're not even cannabis. Even now, recently, we have seen cannabis that's laced with fentanyl, and fentanyl is a highly potent and highly addictive opioid. So the source by which you obtain your cannabis is critical. So that's one thing for new users. Also, dose makes a really huge issue, especially for new users. So today's cannabis that's on the street, that's used recreationally, has a very high concentration of THC, much higher than 10 years ago, 20 years ago, many decades. So it's gone from like 4% THC to nearly, in some products, 24%. And certain products, even those obtained from dispensaries, could even have 70% THC. And the greater the THC concentration, the greater the potential impact on mental health, and the greater the potential to actually become addicted to it. One of the things that's really important to understand is that even though marijuana may be legal now for recreational and medicinal purposes in New York State, it's still a Schedule I drug federally. And CBD that is derived from hemp, and a hemp plant is a plant that contains less than 0.3% THC. CBD is unscheduled, so that's fine federally. The problem that we have today is that there are many, many bad actors out there, and they're now trying to sell products that are derived from hemp plant, for example, not just CBD, but even Delta 8 THC. So in the cannabis plant, the cannabinoid that produces the high is Delta 9 THC. And we know that Delta 9 THC is the one that causes many of the mental health issues, if we see mental health issues, especially with high THC content plants. But Delta 8 THC, many companies now are trying to sell as the safe THC. But you have to know that that is not true. There are many companies out there that are faking their certificate of analysis to say that this is a Delta 8 THC product, when indeed it turns out that it has Delta 9 THC and other things, even lead and heavy metals that are not good for you. So it's really important to understand that just because cannabis has now been made legal in New York State and so on, and CBD is also unscheduled federally, and Delta 8 is also an unscheduled cannabinoid, it doesn't mean that they're safe. So that's the critical thing for us is that even if something is considered legal, where the product comes from makes a big difference. So Delta 8 THC is not quote unquote safer than Delta 9 THC if it's from a product and companies that are actually not even selling you the product that you think the THC, the cannabis that you think you're consuming. Many people don't realize that you can actually become addicted to marijuana, to cannabis. In fact, the diagnosis of a cannabis use disorder is about 30% in people with frequent use of the drug. And that percentage is not really different from other highly addictive drugs, for example, cocaine and opioids. The reason that we have such a high prevalence of cannabis use disorder being diagnosed is that a greater number of people use cannabis, and then therefore they convert into addiction. So yes, you can absolutely become addicted to cannabis. And often this is due to the fact that the THC concentration in the cannabis today is so high. In addition to the potential to develop an addiction to cannabis, what we see mainly with the use of these, especially these high potent cannabis products, are mainly related to mental health. For example, issues with attention, memory, cognition. Those are really a side effect or an effect that we see, with chronic cannabis use, and even acute use, motor issues as well, in terms of, you're not going to go drive a car when you have consumed cannabis. We also see the risk for psychosis, especially in younger people, when they consume cannabis. So those are some of the really important things. And of course, for any drug that is being consumed by smoking, you also, incur risks of, especially pulmonary, smoking is not great for your lungs. So that's one thing that you have to also be aware from a medical standpoint. It is really critical to tell your doctor if you're using marijuana or any cannabis product. And the reason is that, like any drug, cannabis is metabolized by these liver enzymes. And many pharmaceutical drugs that you may be taking, other medicines, they may interact at the same enzyme. And therefore, they're going to limit or they might diminish the activity of the medicine that you're taking, or actually increase its activity beyond a therapeutic window. So your doctor absolutely has to know. And I think that that's, one of the things about the legalization of cannabis. Yes, more people are using it, but because it's no longer illegal, there shouldn't be any risk of you being honest with your doctor. So the more honest that you can be, the better treatment that you obtain from your doctor, so that they know not to give you certain medicines because it might interact negatively with a cannabis product. We consider medicine we consider something to be medicine if it's gone through the process of clinical trials, and the FDA has approved it for medicinal use. And for cannabis, there are certain synthetic THC products that have been approved by the FDA, mainly for anti-nausea, for people going through chemotherapy to increase appetite and so on. There's also the FDA has approved the use of CBD, in particular Epidiolex, for 2 rare childhood forms of epilepsy. And CBD cannabidiol is a cannabinoid in the cannabis plant. It doesn't have addictive properties like THC. And so people have been trying to develop that as a potential medicines for a number of illnesses and symptoms. But other than those 2 forms of childhood epilepsy, it's not approved for anything else as yet. So there are very few things that the FDA has approved cannabis for currently for medicinal purposes, but a lot of clinical trials are currently being done. So we'll see, in a few years. Legalizing marijuana, it's a double-edged sword for the medical community, because obviously we want to make sure that people are healthy. And anytime you're taking a drug, you're putting something in your body, in your brain, that you most likely don't need. And, something that can also have negative effects on mental health issues and so on. That's not great. But the legalization of marijuana makes it easier for patients to be honest with their doctors about their cannabis use, which overall gives you better better outcomes, because your doctor knows exactly what you're taking, and therefore can guide your therapeutics or your disease progress in a much better way. Also, for us, in regard to research, the fact that it's no longer illegal makes it easier to conduct certain types of research, for us to indeed investigate what may be the benefits and adverse effects of cannabis for certain disorders, so that we can better guide physicians and their patients about how to use cannabis, if they should use cannabis. So the legalization definitely has helped in that manner for the medical medicine and medical research communities.